Alrighty, I'd like to open the October 22nd, 2024 Select Board at 6:31 PM. This is an in-person meeting at 138 Main Street, Wenham, Mass., first floor. As a convenience to the public, it is available electronically via the Zoom link below or via HW Cam for viewing and participation. In the event of a technology failure, the meeting will continue in person. Please be advised that this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom. It's also recorded for playback video on demand viewing at hwcam.org. Please note that other than call to order, all times are estimated. Items may be taken out of order. We'll start with public input. Purpose for public comment on matters falling within the jurisdiction of the Select Board and not on the current agenda. Public comment on specific agenda items with a public comment period will be deferred until those items are reached. Rules: 2 minutes per person. A person may speak only once. 10 minutes total. All participants wishing to address the Select Board during public comments may do so in person or via Zoom by virtually raising their hands. Speakers must identify themselves by name and street address. The Select Board may not deliberate or vote on matters discussed during public comment, but are not on the agenda. So let's start with reports and announcements.
Sir, did you want to do public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment. We've got one.
Sorry.
That's
Here
okay.
I am. Stacy Metternich, 3 Dexter Lane. At the Select Board meeting on October 8th, 2024, Deidre Parati cited a brief from 7 years ago, and I'd like to see more current information when referencing a current issue like 3A, the MBTA zoning 3A law, and the impact of kids added to the schools and costs. When I was on the school committee, we talked about the impact of Longmeadow project if it passed to the schools. Dr. Mike Harvey, who was a superintendent at the time, said the impact for those 100 units would be 50 to 100 kids within that amount, and that's just a minimum. And he said it would be a minimum cost per kid and not including out-of-district costs. And this development was going to be a 1 to 2 bedroom unit type of building. The Longmeadow development, as everyone knows, was voted down in Hamilton in 2018. And so just so we can reference with new information, and I know there's more information on that would be wonderful to have for people to learn of what is, the cost associated with it. And also, at the last meeting, it was stated that not enough citizens are informed about the 3A law. I suggest the Select Board looked at the Chair's policy from October 19th, 2020, and revise it. In order for citizens to be more informed, they need to learn, they need to ask questions and have more time to learn about this important law. Can we also ask Hamilton residents to make comments at the end if time permits? A 10-minute allotment at 2 minutes a person is just 5 people talking. There's not enough people able to talk and get that information. And also, lastly, there seems to be a lack of transparency with our Select Board. The Wenham Town website states, meeting minutes will be reviewed and approved within 30 days or no more than 3 meetings as dictated by open meeting law. The last approved minutes, I believe, were June 18th of 2024 on the website. So that leaves a gap of 5 to 6 meeting minutes that really need to be approved immediately. And unless you're going into close quarters, I understand those take a while. So I just want to point out a couple things as I've been watching and trying to learn more about the MBTA zoning 3A law with what is going on.
Thank you.
I have a point of clarification to that.
Good, please.
I just want to clarify one point where you mentioned that I quoted from the 2017 report, which is correct. The quote that I read was from the 2017 report, but in your email to the board you stated that it had not been updated. That's incorrect. There is actually an update to that report from 2024, and it's on the MAPC website, and it basically affirms the findings from 2017. So I do believe that that is still relevant information. So just for clarification, that actually is posted on their website.
Okay, I couldn't find that, and I tried to look it up, so, maybe it could be put
Sure.
on the Wenham website, so people can look at the information as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe, and I can, if I get your email, ma'am, I'm happy to send this to you. We do have updated minutes. It's under fiscal year 2025, so perhaps you're looking under 2024, which is actually fiscal year 2024, but they are updated for the select board. I'm happy to send you that link.
Okay, well, I looked under the website where it says agenda, packets, and minutes.
Mhm.
And under fiscal year 2025, there were no minutes. So that's what I'm referring to.
Yes, sir. I can look that up and send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All righty. Let's start with the town administrator's update and town announcements, please.
Yep. Thank you, Peter. Apologies for doing this remotely, but out of respect for the health of everybody in the meeting, I didn't want to interrupt any coughing fits I might have. But anyway, before I start my updates, I just want to recognize Bruce D. Blanchard passed away on October 16, 2024. Bruce resided in Wenham. He's dedicated over 40 years to the town of Wenham, beginning his career as a heavy equipment operator and retiring as the water superintendent. He filled a number of roles, including lieutenant for the Call Fire Department. He was appointed there in 1972. He was, as I mentioned, the superintendent to the water department from 1987 to 2005. He was part of the watershed from 1997 to 2009, the town's ADA coordinator from 2003 through 2011. He was a member of the Veterans Committee and War Memorial Committee from 2007 to 2020. He also served as an election officer from 2013 to 2019. In addition, he served our country honorably in the United States Army during the Veteran War. So his funeral services will be held at 10 a.m. on Thursday, October 24th at C.R. Lyons and Sons. Visitation will take place from 4 to 7 on Wednesday, October 23rd at the funeral home. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made in Bruce's name to the Veterans Committee here in Wenham. If you need any additional information on any of that, please feel free to reach out to the Select Board's office. We can get you the information you need. All right, moving on to updates. So firstly, as everybody knows, we're back in town meeting season again. So the CPC held their publicly required hearing last week on Thursday. And out of that meeting, they will be doing their pre-eligibility applications as they implemented for the first time last year. And those eligibility applications are due on November 18th at 4:30. All applications must fit in either open space recreation, housing, or historic categories. Just to update the board, we hit two major deadlines last week. As you know, the board approved the logo and color scheme to go on the website and to represent the town and its branding efforts. So we were able to meet all submission deadlines to the website on Friday. In addition, we also the decarbonization grant for the town hall, which seems to be we're going to try to move forward with the geothermal HVAC system. That application was completed and submitted timely on Friday as well. So two big milestones there. Next up on the website is we have about 240 active pages on the website currently, and we're whittling it down to 150 or thereabouts. So I know the team met today and made some significant progress, and I believe we're going to get down to that 150-page threshold. And then something else that kind of brought up to my attention, I think it's a good idea, is to put out, obviously with, there's no hesitation from the board or concerns, put out on, social media on our website, just kind of as a reminder to the public, particularly with election season coming in, the bylaws that the town has adopted as it pertains to signage on, in front of your house within the public way. So, probably it'll be something just like direct quotes from the bylaws with maybe some clarification as to what those mean. That's all I have for updates tonight.
All right, Steve. As you and I discussed this morning, I'm going to give residents a monthly opportunity to meet with myself and either Steve or Joe to talk about any issues they may have. This will be posted on the calendar, and we'll probably spread the word of the date and the hour via social media. Probably start out as an hour, and we'll see how much business we get. Anything else?
I wanted to just say a brief word about Bruce Blanchard. There's a lot to be said about Bruce and the life that he led and the service that he gave, but I wanted to just make a personal note that I served with Bruce in the mid-2000s when he was the water commissioner, or water superintendent rather, and I was one of 3 water commissioners for a term, and I was just so impressed with his hard work, his knowledge, and the balance that he was able to strike in running the department really competently, but also making the elected commissioners, a few of which, including myself, were really lay people when it comes to the science of water management, that made us feel like we had a role to play and weren't completely superfluous to the operations of the water department. So he was just a tremendous person, so I wanted to just make that personal observation. And then I don't know, Steve, whether it's been officially announced at a meeting that the Attorney General approved most or all of the town meeting warrant articles that passed. So that would include the so-called junk bylaw. It would include the
Plastic bag.
Thank you, the plastic bag bylaw, and I may be missing 1 or 2.
The septic loan.
Oh, the septic loan program, right? But Steve, maybe you could just clarify for the public, if you don't mind, which ones are now law.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, as you said, so they are all, my understanding is they're all now, a bylaw. We are currently posting them on our various bulletin boards as required by law to notify the public. And then, we will start enforcing them to the extent we can, particularly with the plastic bags. It's probably not going to be a situation where the town's going to be able to go store by store to make sure, but we'll be following up on any calls that people are still using the plastic bags. As you alluded to, the junk bylaw will be reflected in our E360. That's our code, online code, in our next refresh. Also, the CPC, the term limits for all at-large and individually represented boards and committee members will be in effect. And I don't have the list of the rest of those in front of me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot. We can do a more comprehensive update, but I just did want to make people aware that
No, it's a good point.
those had been blessed by the Attorney General's office.
I have a little list, if anybody else has. You do?
I was just going to also point out that Bruce Blanchard was probably the one individual that brought the War Memorial around after a decade of effort of on and off, but he was the one individual that stayed with it throughout the whole process.
Real quickly, we have some community updates here. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who came out for the Bucher Fun Run last Friday. They were able to collectively run 531 miles around the school, collecting over $30,000 in donations. So thank you for everyone to do that. Yeah. We do have a couple of dates here. Just want to put out there. Tomorrow night is the Harvest Social. Ben and I have been working with the ladies over at the Three Sisters organization, along with Accord. They are having it tomorrow evening between 5:30 and 7 at the Holland Hall at the First Church Wenham, and that is to discuss food insecurity within the community. It's also going to be handing out treats from Treat Baking Company, so we are looking forward to having as many people there as possible. Friday the 25th, Winthrop Elementary is having their annual Halloween extravaganza. It's mostly for the kids. It's $12 a student, $25 a family. All are welcome, so that should be an exciting event. As a community event, we have a trunk or treat at Patton Park on Saturday the 27th from 1 to 3. All are welcome. I will personally be having a trunk there, so you are welcome to steal all of our candy. On Thursday, November 7th, we have a Veterans Day Girl Scout celebration being held from 4 to 5:30 at the First Church in Wenham. All veterans are welcome to attend in uniform or hat or shirt, anything to represent themselves. We would also like them to share age-appropriate stories with the girls. It would be a really great opportunity for the girls to be able to say thank you. And they'll be putting poppies together that will then be handed out at the Veterans Day ceremony on Monday 11th. Which starts at 10:15 at Cheeseman Field, followed by a ceremony at 11 a.m. at the cemetery, a 12 o'clock lunch at the fire station, and the Wenham Museum is free to all veterans from 10 to 4 that day. Two quick updates here. Wednesday, the 27th of November, Cutler's having their first turkey trot. So if everybody'd like to come out and put some miles in on Wednesday before the big holiday, they would very much appreciate that. It's going to work a lot like the Bucher Fun Run, so raise some money for Cutler, as they are not doing their ski and snowboard sale this season. And the last date to throw on there is Saturday, the December 7th, is the Holiday Boutique at Winthrop. That is a great event for the community. And last reminder, I also have been holding office hours on Monday from 12 to 1 at the library. All are welcome. We've had some good conversations there the last month, so it's been extremely beneficial.
All righty.
That's it.
All right, so we'll move to the consent agenda. Routine items for approval in a single motion, allowing them to be passed without discussion unless held. The items are minutes. I'm looking at Ben. One-day liquor license for the Wenham Museum, 132 Main Street, for the evening of Friday, November 15th, 2024. One-day liquor license for the Wenham Museum, 132 Main Street, for the evening of Saturday, November 16th, 2024. Council on Aging appointments, David Pearson, Calvin Klein, effective October 22nd, 2024 through June 30th, 2027. So I move to approve items A through D in the consent agenda as printed in this evening's agenda.
Second.
Okay. Ready to vote? Peter, yes?
Deirdre, yes.
Ben, yes.
Karen, yes.
Here he is.
All right. We're moving on to new business, items for individual consideration. These items will allow public comment, 10 minutes. Purpose, this comment period will allow for public comment on individual and will be held before or after the board's discussion of the agenda item at the discretion of the chair. Rules, 2 minutes per person. A person may speak only once. 10 minutes total per item unless noted on the agenda item. Initial discussion on a plan to bring 3A to a town meeting once the Milton case is determined.
Yeah, Chairman, this was a concern brought to me that, to concerned that we should be planning towards, maybe a meeting prior to the annual meeting, depending on the outcome of the Milton case. Karen, I don't know if you want to lead this discussion.
Yeah, I had reached out to Steve in preparation of the Milton case being determined, as well as making sure that we give ample opportunity for the town to be in compliance if possible. We need to be able to have a certain set of guidelines of how the select board would like to interact and approach some of those deadlines. What I had said to Steve is, in the cases that Milton turns around and is determined by November 30th, that does leave us time to be able to host a town meeting. And what do those guidelines look like? In addition, what are the policies that we're willing to take, we're willing to postpone? And that's something that the select board, I think, needs to look at. And it'll also help us with giving the town a little bit more information of, instead of saying we'll wait and see, that we have a little bit more ownership of exactly how we're going to move forward.
I think it's a good idea to discuss this and to think about, what the benchmarks might be coming out of a Supreme Judicial Court decision. As we've discussed before, the usual SJC time standards from the time of an oral argument to the time of a written decision is 130 days. They try to achieve that. It's not a hard and fast rule by any means, but that's around 4.5 months. So if they met that, it would be sometime in February that they would issue the decision, but it's certainly possible that they might do it sooner. The justices didn't give any indication at the oral argument that they plan to expedite a decision, but that doesn't mean that they might not try to do that. It seems to me that it might be wise for us to propose to, coalesce around this idea as a board, and then propose to the planning board perhaps that within, let's say, a week or 2 weeks of the SJC decision, that there be a joint meeting of the select board with the planning board, because it's the planning board that will be responsible for potentially adjusting the rezoning proposal that they have brought to a near final stage based on the existing state of the 3A guidelines. But if the SJC comes down with a decision that throws out some or all of the 3A guidelines, that may well require that there be changes to the proposal. It may require that there need not be any proposal, depending on what the SJC does. But it would make sense that we meet with the planning board, I think, very quickly after we have that decision, so that there can be a public discussion on what the decision means, where a rezoning proposal might need to go, or maybe that it's shelved for some period of time or forever, depending on what the decision is. I don't think there's much we can do, really, until the SJC decision comes out, because everything's in a holding pattern right now as to whether the law and the guidelines are going to be affirmed in full or in part, or thrown out in full or in part. And so I just don't know that there's much we can do until that decision comes, but it would be wise to maybe plan something for immediately afterwards.
Yeah. So when they first met, what I heard from Ian Weeks was it didn't go well for
The
state
Attorney
of
General,
Massachusetts.
right.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
I think that's right. Right, exactly.
We hope.
Right, yep, right.
Are you all right with that, or Gary?
So in any case, if they stick to the 130-day schedule, that still puts it pretty tight against our town meeting schedule. So I think we need to, right now, start backing up from town meeting to the warrant hearing. And certainly we're going to need some public forums or other methodologies fit in there between the approach to the town meeting and after a very rapid, if needed, change within the planning board's decision that comes to us. So, yeah, certainly we're going to need I see a series of meetings right after the decision to look at the consequences of what comes out of it, whether we'll need to adjust the current planning board's situation and then move forward with, I should think, multiple forums at different times or places so that we can inform the folks both on 3A as it was, what the process has been, and the consequence of the Supreme Court decision. So I think maybe, Steve, we're going to be looking at the budget schedule too tonight. So I think we need to just pencil in all the dates and prospective activities in that maybe just 40 days we'll have to make that decision.
Yeah, we also had the discussion of, I personally don't think that we should wait until the Milton case comes out from a determination standpoint in order to be able to have the forums and begin to really dive into educating the town. I think that there's a lot of misinformation, and I think that there's a lot of information that lumps us in with the Hamilton residents. And Wenham has done an excellent job with putting together a plan, and I do believe that we need to be able to have an open forum, have people be able to ask the questions that they need to be able to ask. I think we have a social media presence that is truly causing some angst, and I think that it'd be really in the best interest of the select board in order to be able to have, and the planning board as well, to have more educational forums or more educational open opportunities.
I wish Margaret Hoffman were here, but she's down and out. We have had
I understand that.
a lot.
I understand. And I just feel that in order to be able to give this a real go, I think we need, as a select board, to be out there and answering the questions instead of sitting back and having the planning board take a lot of the questions, a lot of the information.
Well, you would suggest a date coming up in November or December to have
Yep.
an initial forum on kind of the status up to this date and what could come next as far as decisions from the Supreme Court.
I think we need to communicate as much as possible, and waiting for the website to get up doesn't necessarily give
No.
us the information. So I understand that the planning board's doing a lot, but I feel like this board needs to do something. And whether or not
Why don't we do it jointly with the planning board?
we can, that'd be great. And I think that we need to be able to have that as an open option for the town to be able to ask the questions. I see it on social media. It takes my entire body not to respond to some of this stuff because it's incorrect. And regardless of whether or not you believe in 3A, you want to be able to have the right information. And that's what it comes down to, because I think that it's not being supplied. And it'd be great to have some bit of communication, whether it be online or forums,
Well, I'll
or
talk to,
we put together a flyer.
I'll talk to Ann and Dan, because Dan's the one who really did all the work with Margaret. And we'll get a forum going.
Well, you can talk to the planning board. You can't talk to Ann and Dan because that's a quorum of the planning board, but you can talk to Ann.
Yeah, you're right. I can talk to them separately.
Mr. Chair.
No, you
Yeah.
can't.
What about because I think there's some value to the idea of a public forum on the question of housing.
Mhm.
I don't think it would be wise to have a public forum before the SJC decision on the subject of 3A or the subject of the rezoning proposal in particular, because it would just create a lot of confusion on the part of the public if we're talking about a proposal that's going to be moot in a few months' time, or a rezoning proposal that's going to be different based on guidance provided by the SJC. But I do like the idea of a public forum on a certain number of topics that could be identified in advance, perhaps, around the idea of housing. And maybe the right vehicle for that is sort of in the way of master plan implementation. Maybe if we're focused on the parts of the master plan that address housing, and use that as sort of a platform for a public discussion on what people would like to see happen in the area of housing. And there may be people who have been vocally against 3A who, come to that forum and voice, general opposition to what they see as overgrowth or, too much density and so on, and that's fine. But there may be other people who voice a different position about wanting to see more housing or more types of housing or which areas. So almost like kind of going back a little bit to, not to square one, because the master plan brought us, quite far along, but to sort of a brainstorming session in the area of master plan housing objectives implementation. And then that information could be useful to our board and to the planning board once the 3A situation is clarified by the Supreme Court, and might impact the next rezoning proposal. So I'd support something like that, but I really wouldn't support having a forum on 3A specifically or on the planning board's rezoning proposal, because it's quite possible and probably likely that they're going to change.
Deirdre, Gary, comments?
Well, as I said before, I think, our concentration has to be on the time period between the Supreme Court decision and town meeting, because given the lead time for changes perhaps by the planning board, bringing it to the select board, have that approach, get it onto a warrant article, and the 30-day warrant hearing or warrant opening time, it's going to be very dense. So, I would also support, perhaps a little bit ahead of that in January, either a general discussion on housing or including 3 on A and that, because right now, I think the board needs to take some action to, put out the correct information out there, and what, perhaps not what the status is, but perhaps the consequences of what happens, at least with a yes vote or a no vote, or, a major change in the Supreme Court decision. What is the town going to do? Because I think a lot of people are just asking the question now, what's next, what's next? And I think we need to at least have a plan date-wise as to what we're going to do.
Yeah, and I see Karen's point, and I do agree that we do need to do some public information sessions. I guess what I'm struggling at the moment is to sort of visualize with some clarity what that would actually look like in practice, and sort of what the points would be and what the essentially agenda would be. I think it's sort of a free-form discussion, given all the nebulousness of the moment and the lack of certainty around what the law will look like in the end. It's sort of hard to see. My concern was that the attempt is to bring clarity, and I'm not sure on how we would do that, and I don't want it to sort of go in the other direction and add more confusion because we don't have clarity. And when I think we can talk about the master plan and the housing goals specifically, but the master plan is not granular in terms of saying, XYZ on XYZ parcel. It's not that specific, right? They're broader goals, and I think that's an important part of the context. But again, I'm struggling to see what that actually would look like to do a public information forum now. So maybe we need to sort of ruminate on this a bit and try to concretely think, what would the discussion points be? What would the presentations be? Because I don't think it should be just an open forum.
But doesn't the that implementation matrix that is like extremely detailed, I realize it doesn't get into as granular as you just said in terms of what, where housing should be built, but surely there are there's a portion of that matrix that stems from the housing piece, and that might set an agenda of topics that might be worth going over, and clearly it would relate to whatever might happen with 3A. But just by way of example, one of the reasons why I think we need to wait on 3A and the rezoning proposal specifically is that one possibility is that the Supreme Court makes very clear that the only consequences for a town not complying, excuse me, it would be ineligibility for I believe, 5 specific grant programs that are mentioned in the statute. The state takes a much broader view right now and says that they can, withhold all kinds of grant money and maybe go further than that. The SJC might say, okay, it's a law that towns have to comply with, but if they don't, the only penalty is this, this, and this. And that would be important information for people to have so they understand what the consequences of non-compliance are. But we don't know yet what that's going to be. So I think we're grasping in the dark. We would be grasping in the dark on 3A information without the Supreme Court decision. And I completely agree with what Gary said, that we do need to backward plan from the Springtown meeting to figure out when we're going to have these various sessions. And if we're surprised and the SGC comes out with a decision like this year, I don't think that's going to happen, but if it does, then we can accelerate that planning and maybe have a special town meeting, in the late winter, early spring. But we have no way of knowing when the decision is going to come out at this point. So it seems like it's, it could be a conversation with the planning board and maybe Steve to propose some dates, backward planning for now from the Springtown meeting, but that calendar could shift backwards and sooner if the Supreme Court decision comes out sooner than what we think it might.
My only concern is that if the Milton case does decide to read out early,
Mm-hmm.
and we have not done our due diligence in educating the town and given them the opportunity after potentially finding out the first week of December
Mm-hmm.
what the outcomes are, and we haven't put together a plan to say, hey, let's educate. We've got 3 weeks to still be in compliance. So there is a possibility that Milton's going to come back. We may or may not like the decision, and then we haven't planned to allow the town to make a decision and we haven't taken the time to inform them about that decision. So in my mind, it's much more of a planner brain. I would love to see a schedule to say, if this occurs, we still can be in compliance. We still can have a town meeting. We still have done our due diligence with providing information as the Milton case rules. What I'd hate to see is have them come out the first week of December with the ruling. It's something that is not beneficial for the town. We could potentially lose a lot of funding, and then we say we'll deal with it in January.
But Karen, the odds of that happening?
I am not an all as much as we have a lot of eggs at the house. I'm not an all eggs in one basket person. It makes me very nervous, and I think that we owe the people in the town to be able to have that. And that is kind of where I'm at.
So can I suggest that we spend some time thinking this through a little more specifically and try to actually think about what a session would look like, what topics we would theoretically cover, and when Margaret is available to get her input as well. Maybe Steve can talk to the planning board chair to see her input, or it could be on a planning board agenda to get the input from the board and just to see what their opinion is on the idea of doing it prior to December, doing a public forum, information forum prior to the end of this calendar year. Because I think we're not all
I'm with
there.
Deirdre. Makes sense. So what would a forum look like? What would we actually talk about?
And how would we present it?
And how would that be different than what we've done in previous forums? Because we have done forums.
I understand that. I also understand that if they come out the first week of December, and it's not something that is beneficial for the town. We haven't scheduled a backup town meeting. We haven't gotten out there and said what the policies are, and that worries me. And in talking to Steve, I might be wrong, you and I discussed this, it takes 3 weeks to be able to put the information out to have a backup town meeting?
Yeah, if everything works out and we have a venue, it'd take about 3 weeks. The planning board, the wrinkle in this is the planning board, I believe, will have to hold another hearing. So there's a, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a 2-week advertising requirement for that. So you're looking at probably about 5 weeks for this particular case, because it's a zoning bylaw amendment.
Perfect, because we have about 7 to 8 weeks of stuff to do. So 5 weeks is close, but we could still do it.
But how would, so it sounds like, Karen, that what you'd like to do is to have a special town meeting on 3A scheduled this calendar year? Is that right? Or?
Well, we voted as a board to not do that.
Right.
With the assumption that Milton was going to be read out in February.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But if it's not, because there is no date, and what they read out is not going to benefit the town, so if it's outside of those 5 grants and they say, it's also
Right.
your school, it's also other items, we're not leaving ourselves a backup plan.
Right, but I'm just struggling to understand what the backup plan is going to be from a practical standpoint when it comes to the question of a special town meeting to vote on 3A one way or the other, because we could, I mean, theoretically, we could say, let's plan now for a special town meeting on December 20th, which we wouldn't do, but whatever, and before the end of the calendar year. But then if there's no change in the state of the law and in the SJC decision, then that date goes away.
Right.
Causing, I think, a waste of resources and confusion on the part of the townspeople. Like, wait a minute, we had one in November, now it's December. That's what. So I don't think we can schedule anything until we have the decision. And I'm not sure that there's much we can do for preparation for a town meeting that would follow the SJC decision, other than maybe the planning and saying, okay, here's when the meetings are going to occur once we get word from the SJC. And then also perhaps, like I suggested, a public information meeting on forum on housing, maybe tied to master plan objectives, maybe not. And if that forum could happen before the end of the year, terrific. I mean, I think that would be a good thing. It would probably be a good signal to the state and to EOHLC that, we're doing something in the area of housing. So that, I'm repeating myself at this point, so.
Yeah, I think we all are.
Yeah.
So we're going to work on the dates backwards for Gary. Karen, you're going to say, hey, this is what a forum would look like, and this is what we would talk about. Okay? And I think Ben is still going to object.
Well,
Not necessarily.
let's hold on that thought.
Yeah. And we'll discuss it at the next select board meeting. Okay? All right. So are we on F?
Yes, sir.
Review, discussion, and potential vote to adopt a policy to honor past and current board committee members and employees who have passed away. Any discussion?
Yeah, just an overview. This is the purple drapes that get hung out
Right.
in front of town hall. Since the flying at half mast is dictated by the state, we thought this could be a good way to honor deceased board committee members, any and all employees, in a way that we can be consistent in our application. So this is just something I know a couple board members have commented on, a desire to have something like this to me. So I thought how we put this together and seeing if the board thought it had some value, would like to support it going forward.
And I like the twist, if it's a fire or police, then they will also put the banners over their windows. So, you guys all okay with this? Okay, move to adopt the Town of Wenham policy for honoring deceased board, committee, and employees.
Can I ask a quick question? Is this including a lowering of the flag, or is it?
The
No.
flag is not under our control.
Okay.
Only the
Thank you.
governor and president can do that.
Well, I know that was a question recently of whether or not we do that, so I didn't know if that was lumped into here. Okay, thank you.
So I moved.
Second.
Discussion? All right. Peter votes yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Ben, yes.
Karen, yes.
Here, yes.
Unanimous? All right, review, discussion, and potential vote to adopt a policy outlining the town administrator's annual performance review process.
So here, this is a proposed review process, as requested by the board last year, a policy to be brought forward, a policy that would be transparent, but also respect the personnel privacy of their town administrator, and not subject him or her to a fully public review process. So this is a way that other communities, it was suggested by KP Law's Labor Council that other communities employ, and works well in those situations.
Discussion?
I like this new policy. In the past, we've run into issues with OML and confidentiality and so forth. So now that this is past peer review with the KP Law, I think this provides a setup where the public can see the results, but we don't get tied up in the entanglements of OML and so forth.
So, Steve, I think for the benefit of the public, can you just briefly explain what this procedure is?
Yeah, Michelle, I think you just scroll down. So essentially what it is each board member will be a performance review form that will be distributed to each board member. That board member will then complete the review independently, rating in each category a 1 through 5, or any increments between them. And during this process, neither the town administrator nor the board members are precluded from meeting with one another one-on-one to discuss performance or performance ratings as they deliberate on how to rate the town administrator at any time. The submission of those completed reviews are submitted to the assistant town administrator, where he will simply tally up the scores in each category and assigning an average to each category based on the 5 individual reviews. And the individual reviews will then be submitted to the town administrator's personnel file for confidentiality. And the town administrator will then give to the administrator the averages, and with a report filled out with the averages to be distributed to the select board, which can then do with it what it wishes. I was envisioning maybe a read through in a public meeting and submitting that performance review into the public domain as a public document that can be reviewed and requested by the public as they wish.
And is this similar, more or less consistent with what many other towns do
That is what I've been told.
by KP Law?
Yeah.
I just have a question on one of the bullet points, which I think needs some clarification. In step 1, it says individual board members or the town administrator are not precluded from meeting to discuss performance or performance ratings at any time. So I think that that means to say individual board members can meet with the town administrator, because we shouldn't be meeting with each other to discuss it, but it's not really clear.
Yeah, it was intended to mean individually with the town administrator and a singular board member.
So I think we just need to reword that so that it's clear.
Okay.
So individual board members may meet individually with the town administrator.
Or just say "and" instead of "or."
Yeah, but it's awkward. Are not precluded from, we just should say what they are able to do. Individual board members may individually meet with the town administrator
Okay,
to discuss performance.
I'm fine with that. It's more positive.
Yeah.
We can make that change.
So, I move to adopt the performance review procedure for the town administrator policy as amended tonight.
Second?
I think we discussed it. Peter votes yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Ben, yes.
Yes.
Carrie, yes.
Unanimous. Okay, discussion on the calendar of required meetings for the April 2025 annual town meeting and the fiscal year 26 budget cycle.
Michelle, can you please display that?
Oh, boy.
All right, so what we've done, or really Michelle has done, she went back with last year's budget schedule. We've distributed this to a number of boards and committees, so they're working on their dates, basically where it says to be updated. They're working on their dates, but we updated all this. We updated the town meeting date, and we worked backwards with some of the key dates we were aware of and when they took place last year. We also updated all the select board meetings to reflect the first and third Tuesday of each month. Obviously, those can be altered, but to provide the boards a framework of meeting schedules and key dates that had to be met, we wanted to go ahead and update it. So, a lot of these to be updateds are now with other committees, and they're working, within their own respective areas to come up with dates that fall, kind of within this framework, working from town meeting backwards till today. So I don't know. I know, Peter, I don't remember. We had one day it was conflicting with, I believe, was a school building committee meeting.
Yeah, so it's...
You remember what that was?
Yeah, it was the first select board meeting in January. It was slipped back a week.
Okay. All right. So we'll. All right. So that's no problem. So we'll shift that back. So if we shift that to what's one week? The 14th,
Yep.
and then the 21st would go out to the 28th.
Why do you have to slip 21, January 21st? Why don't you just leave it where it is?
The 14th and the 21st.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that works. I think it's important that time of year to have it, even if we're meeting like 2 weeks in a row. This time of year is always there's always a lot going on. So, and sometimes we end up having to throw a meeting in here or there. So, it sounds good to me if it works for the board.
Okay. guys all okay with this?
Well, I'm just commenting, we have a select board meeting on election day. I thought we
I
had
think we changed that.
It's on the
talked about
6th, right?
that.
Right, it's the next, yeah, we changed it to the 6th.
It's on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, not here.
But if you go to the calendar,
No, I know, but right here. it
She's
says-
saying here, it needs to be
Not right.
corrected.
Which one's this?
November
November
5th,
5th.
Select Board should be November 6th.
on the town website, you have it right, but it's not right on this form.
Okay.
So are we okay with this now?
Yeah.
Looks good. We can, have we run this by the school committee and the superintendent, Steve?
Yeah, so all the school dates are up to date as far as the way they're moving forward. So like the 5 chair meetings, the quintuple board meetings, those are updated with the dates that were elected on our meeting on, I think it was October 7th. Excuse me, September 18th.
Ready to go to the next topic? Discussion on reconciliation of ARPA funds and consideration of alternate uses for the anticipated surplus. Yeah, I got a question.
Can you just bump this down to the spreadsheet, Michelle, please? This.
Steve, is it okay if the chief speaks as well, Chief DiNapoli, on this topic?
Yeah, just not just yet.
Okay.
So, I mean, just quick recap. Last time we went over the status of the projects, we highlighted that there'd likely be some surplus funds as we wrap things out and, forego projects such as the iron rail septic that, probably doesn't make sense to do. So the board asked for, a more detailed final reconciliation of funds. So that's what you're looking at in front of you. We're anticipating roughly about $290,000 in excess funds. With that said, Rich Souza, has had other requests on the list, so he has a bunch of open contracts and a lot of ADA ramps, stormwater, drainage, roadway projects that kind of in the wings, ready to go if the board needed. West Wenham Park, Kate's also here. She can speak to this in a minute if there's any questions. But West Wenham Park, as you know, has come in a little bit over budget, like most building projects. When we originally did the feasibility study, that was 3 years ago, I believe. So costs have gone up. So we're looking at about $150,000. But they would be able to phase them in. The project is still moving forward. It would still be able to be completed, but it would be missing some key features. The police station, they're here. They're asking for an additional $15,000 to finish their project due to some overage. My understanding is it could be done minimally for less than that. However, for the full project as originally proposed to come to completion, it'd be about $15,000. And premium pay for essential workers. This is, I believe, on the next page. Joe and the police chiefs worked to come up with basically just a spreadsheet that compares. We tried to grab every community in the North Shore, so geographically relevant to the town of Wenham, and identify what they did. And, you know, so obviously it ranges. We, you know, just for context, when you're looking at this, we have about, I'm just pulling up we have, for police, fire, in DPW, we have about 20 full-time individuals. For part-time across police and fire, we have about 37 individuals. So, I mean, just for context, and I'm not, you know, suggesting any dollar amount, but if you were to use, you know, what appears to be a general average of, you know, about $2,000 for full-time and about an average of $1,000 for part-time, you're looking at about $70,000 to do like a one-time stipend to thank the individuals for their service during the pandemic. Again, that, you know, the board can decide one way or the other if they wish to do it at what level, but just to give you an idea when you're kind of working through the numbers. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions. Remember, I know the Chief Napoli is here, and Kate Mallory is also here if you have any questions.
Can you go back to the previous page, please? Yeah, that thing's right in the way. Feature ad. So, in my opinion, paying the police, firefighters, and DPW workers is a top priority versus these, versus these three things.
I'm in full agreement with Peter.
You're-
I'm in full agreement with you. It should be top priority. For the full amount, it's the 70,000.
Right.
A question, Steve, if we go to the other slide, oh, sorry, but did any of the other towns consider recognition for our other frontline people in the COVID, such as our district nurse, our maintenance folks?
Yeah, I mean, not as widely as police and fire. However, Danvers did do their DPW and custodial. Nobody that we reached out to did anything for the teachers. A couple of communities just said that the town didn't do anything, but their district may have. We don't know if our district did. They had separate funds that were separate from opera that could be used for similar to that. Again, I know this came up last time when we originally discussed this, and you know, just for, I know we're still going to work through the dollar amounts, but they have between about 160 and 170 full-time equivalents for teachers in the Hamilton Wenham district. So, I mean, you can do rough math. I don't know what the board is thinking, but I mean, you can do rough math with 2,000, 1,000 per person, or if you're looking at, you know, a per hourly stipend. I know also in that packet, the police union put forward a proposal that was a little bit more granular and was looking to, you know, account for every hour worked. I'm not sure if the board would be interested in that. We don't have we have that proposal in front of you tonight, but we don't have all the details on for all the other individuals and what hours they worked and how many. But if that is something that the board would like to do, we certainly can, you know, can put those numbers together for you.
Kevin, I have a question for you. So firefighters and policemen died during COVID.
No doubt.
Sorry?
Yes, sir. Yes, no doubt. Absolutely.
Do we know if teachers died?
I mean, there were all sorts of people that were having contact during different, my wife's a nurse, there were nurses that died, there were doctors that died, there were certainly people in all jobs, depending. It's hard to say who had interaction, who didn't. Obviously, I stand before you as a public safety professional. It's near and dear to my heart, the people that have recognized what the men and women of the fire department and the police departments have done when nobody really knew at the time the dangers and the fears that existed. Obviously, I'm biased. My wife and daughter are nurses as well, and to think of what they went through and what all the people in the medical profession went through at the time with an unknown at the time. So without a doubt, there were some inherent risks.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So just for clarity, to make sure I'm understanding this, on the towns, the chart with the towns, so Ipswich through Marblehead, they did not do any compensation whatsoever?
Ipswich looks like they gave them 48 hours of
Yes,
paid leave.
Oh, I see.
personal COVID.
But otherwise, it's all zeros, so all of
Correct.
those towns didn't do anything?
Correct. Manchester by the Sea, Gloucester, Marblehead, Salem did not pay premiums.
What is the comment under Wakefield, Peabody, Merrimack, under police part-time? Does that say they actually paid part-time, but not the full-time?
The paid out on a prorated basis.
Yes.
Yeah, that was, I believe the fire chief had, I'm sorry, paid on a prorated basis on hours. Yeah, I think they had taken the number of hours worked and paid them out that way on a prorated basis. I'm not exactly sure, but
Right, for the part-time police officers, which Hamilton, Danvers, and Topsfield looks like they did the same. For the part-time,
But just for part-time?
yeah.
right, not full time.
Just
yes.
curious. The 70,000 that you mentioned, so that would cover police, fire, and what does that cover?
Oh, sorry. That was simply just to contextualize how many personnel we're talking, and, the board can come up with its own dollar amount. And I was just using, looks like Hamilton used 2,000 per firefighter, Danvers 2,000 per firefighter. Similarly with the police, and then a dollar amount less than that for their call. Some were prorated based on hours, some were just a percentage of call response, and some was just a flat dollar amount. So, but that 70,000, just talking rough math, would cover $1,000 for each DPW worker, $2,000 for each full-time fire and police, and $1,000 for each part-time fire and police officer. We wouldn't be looking at taking into account of, if they worked the entire 3-year period during the pandemic, how many calls they showed up, how many hours. Just, if they worked during that period, that's the board's thank you. And we certainly can get more granular than that, but that was just like a high-level contextual aid I threw out there.
Okay, that's what I needed. I guess the only one that I'm concerned is missing is our nurse who was doing the vaccinations.
Yeah, that's totally appropriate.
Would it be appropriate to add Board of Health as well?
I don't know that the Board of Health was on the front lines, but they probably certainly did.
The
A lot of
district
work.
nurse was, but not the...
The nurse was, for sure, yeah.
So let's add her in. It makes good catch.
So I would say that to try to go back and calculate the hourly prorated basis over 3 years for some that were employed for some time or part-time and so forth, it just drives the cost up. So I would be in favor of, 2,000 full-time, 1,000 part-time. If you serve during that time, then you qualify. Make it simple.
A question for you, Chief. Thank you. With respect to the part-time employees of your department who might benefit from this, can you give us, and if you don't have the data in front of you, we could get it later perhaps, but a sense of, are there any people who were really quite part-time they joined at a particular point. Do you have any concerns, I suppose, on a prorated approach that it looks like 6 different towns did for their part-time police
No,
officers?
I mean, I believe it was Gary that brought up the fact that, you can really get deep into the weeds with, if you parse out how many people worked, how many hours and whatnot. We certainly have some part-timers that work now and did work at that time far more than other part-timers. But also no fault of those part-timers that aren't able to be or weren't able to be here as much, because most of them have other full-time jobs. Yeah, there certainly are some. There's, we're down to 8 part-timers right now, and there's probably 1 or 2 that work a bulk of the hours compared to the other, 6 or 7, without a doubt.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I said this the last time we talked about this, so I just feel like I really need to say it again. I do find it difficult to swallow that teachers would be getting nothing under this program, and I recognize the reasons that would be a challenge. First and foremost, that we don't have administrative or other authority or control over the regional school department. But, I think that we're still learning as a society all of the impacts from the pandemic, and certainly the impacts on our public schools, the school children and public school teachers was profound and traumatic to a lot of people. And I think that teachers took a tremendous amount of unfair criticism as well during the pandemic. Seemed to be, almost the sort of the target of certain criticisms during the pandemic about, from some parents who weren't happy with how the school districts across the country, but I saw it in Hamilton Wenham, were trying to grapple with something that was completely unprecedented and unknown. And from my perspective, our school district did the best they could. They erred on the side of caution. There was no roadmap for this, and I think teachers, contributed a lot and deserve some compensation in the same way that our first responders and our healthcare professionals do. So I just want to say that because I realize that it may be impractical to do it, but if there's a way to include them, I'd like to explore it.
Gary?
Or perhaps what we could do then is make a decision on our body, and then as a select board, make a recommendation or appeal to the school committee to follow our pattern or the pattern of Hamilton already, to compensate the teachers under their budget structure.
That makes sense. Would you be okay with that?
Yes, I think that I would be okay with that, and I appreciate that suggestion. I'd also be okay with earmarking some amount of money that the town of Wenham would contribute to that, because again, I realize there are logistical hurdles.
You're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, clearly, the school committee and Eric Tracy and crew talked about this.
Is that right? I mean, I don't know that. I don't know that they've had that conversation.
I mean, I can check. I'll ping Dana Alara and say, hey, did you guys ever discuss this? I'd be stunned if they didn't.
Right, if they did, it would certainly be, that would be useful information.
So I'll do that.
I mean, I
I'll follow up
agree
on
with your sentiment and the intent. I just, because it's a regional school district and they are a separate entity in essence, I think it's not within our purview to put money aside in the absence of some kind of agreement through school committee, but also with the town of Hamilton. It's a regional school district, so I think how would Wenham alone do that in a regional school district, which is its own governing body? I just think, given the structure,
I 100% agree with you. We're not going to set aside money for something that we don't even know
Yeah.
exists.
Well, I think given
Aaron
the,
and Gary, you guys?
So, no, do you think that would just go along with the other towns there? So does the board think 2,000, 1,000 a reasonable amount? I mean, I think the intent is to recognize the service given, but also conceding that, no amount could compensate some folks that, add the poor, desperate circumstances of other towns where they lost police officers. But I think we do need to, make this gesture, and this seems like a reasonable amount based upon what we have available in ARPA funds.
So do we have to vote on this?
Yes, definitely. Indeed, just for clarity, I was using 1,000 for the DPW because they were doing, I believe they were on 1 week on, 1 week off through the pandemic. But the board can, certainly go to 2,000. But I just want clarity that they were full-time, but working, I believe, at 50% capacity through the pandemic. But I can confirm that.
so I think the agenda is not listed for a vote. This is, the agenda item is discussion on reconciliation of ARPA and consideration of alternative uses. So I think we.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's true. I didn't anticipate the board getting far enough to make a decision. But if when it does, it will definitely need a vote.
Oh, yeah. I'm just suggesting that we clarify the numbers between now and the next meeting and the decisions, and then vote on sort of the final roster.
Makes sense, Deirdre.
Mr. Chair. So we also discussed, just in terms of wrapping this up, so we discussed adding the town nurse,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Are there any other frontline healthcare workers that are town of Wenham employees besides the town nurse? I know there's Board of Health members who are volunteers, and the town nurse may actually be one of those individuals. I know her husband is, but
I can say that
chaplain.
Jackie Bresnahan, although not a Board of Health member, from what I've heard, was certainly on the front lines running the vaccine clinics and all that. So I don't know, just throwing that out there.
I'm sorry, Jackie Bresnahan?
Jackie Bresnahan, I believe, worked very closely with Mary Beth, and was out there, running the vaccination clinics and all that right through the thick of it.
So we should probably include current or former employees of the town of Wenham Health Department who served during the COVID pandemic. That would be the category. So it sounds like there'd be two people, and then maybe we want to talk about what the amount would be. So we've talked about the amounts for the other positions, but we haven't talked about a proposed amount for.
So Steve, can you work out or propose amounts for the medical people?
Yep. And I'll come up with whatever there's official dates of the start and end of the pandemic. So we'll frame it out. So there's a start date, there's an end date. Whoever worked within that time frame, dollar amounts, total costs, the roster. We'll have that all for the board next time.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Back on the front page, so do we need to talk about the police station final bill, or?
Yeah, please.
Michelle, can you just scroll up to the other page?
And just to follow up on the last conversation, I just want, on behalf of the men and women in public safety, I know the deputy and I are very appreciative, as I know they are, and the money is great, but the recognition is more important, and the money is an icing on the cake. But I know they, past and current employees that worked through it, without a doubt, I can't put into words how much they would appreciate your consideration of it, so thank you. So I met with myself and Mike Hardy and the deputy, went and met with T.A. Poulos last week, and just, kind of a state of the state on where we were with the project. And I again, want to thank you for allocating these funds 2.5 years ago now, when then TA Younger brought it to the attention of department heads to propose usage of the funds. To have this opportunity that otherwise wouldn't have been presented to us is an incredible opportunity with the size of our department and the physical structure and layout of the agency on a limited budget. To have this opportunity has been incredible. Specifically, as we have navigated through the process, I want to thank DPW, especially Mike Hardy, for being essentially the general contractor of this project. He's been great to work with. He's been super attentive, put a lot of his time, along with Deputy Chief Ucantoni and Executive Administrative Assistant Jackson, that have helped manage the funds and the spending and kind of the project ideas of from anywhere from layout to paint colors to how we're doing it. So I do want to thank them as well. Specific to where we're at now and why I'm standing before you, 2.5 years ago was a little bit of a different time when these requested funds were brought forward. The tentative change in construction costs is anywhere from 20 to 30% that we were able to find online. The deputy helped me do some research with that. Not to mention at that time, and I think Gary's probably the only one that was here at the time that I remember. It was at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the town was heavily considering doing carpet for all the town buildings, and we had brought that forward as it was going to be like an overall capital item. I forget how it was discussed. So the carpet costs were not included in this original request for funds. That in and of itself, along with the skyrocketing 20 to 30% increase of the supplies, kind of put me before you now to respectfully request for a little more funding to be able to complete the project in its entirety. So that's where I stand before you now. That $15,000 is a generic number, broadly based on what I know still needs to be done. My hope, and TA Poulos had mentioned, is to come in below that, which I'm confident we can do, but I know that high water mark will put it to the point where certainly not a perfect situation, but would get us to the project would be relatively complete, so we can, put a bow on it. So I'd be glad to answer any questions about that or give more details of what we've done. My goal also is when the project is complete, I'd like to coordinate it with the board and whomever else would like to come over and see the completed project. So I'll give a tour of the station and show you each thing that we did, and I'm excited and looking forward to that. It's been a long process, but I'm super excited for the men and women of the police department to have the building kind of with a refresh to where we are now. So that's it.
Sounds good. Any questions, guys? Folks?
Great. Thank you very much.
So we'll
Thank you,
need a
Chief.
vote on this at the next meeting? Each of these items?
Yep.
All right.
I have a question for Kate, actually. Kate, can you give us a quick rundown on the West Wenham Park?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So the West Wenham Park just went out to bid, and while we were preparing the bid, it had come back, like Chief DiNapoli was saying, well over budget. So we thought we were going to be about $300,000 short. So we redid our strategy and we went out doing what's called an alt bid. So we said, all right, we know we have enough money for the infrastructure. We hope we have enough money for the sports court. There were a few things that we knew we could get through the pump track, but things like playground equipment, exercise equipment, we knew that we didn't have enough money for. We thought we were going to be about $300,000 short. When we went out to bid doing this alternative strategy, we ended up getting one bidder that was extremely low compared to the rest. I like to think that we got really lucky here because this one bid would make us about $125,000 short. So actually the number went down from 150. I just estimated that when I asked Steve to put this out for us. So we could have the whole park done for $125,000 of this ARPA money. Then the what we'd like to do is in April have an opening ceremony around Arbor Day time, have the whole community come, ribbon cutting ceremony, planting trees, invite the Newtown newspaper over. It would be a really wonderful event for everybody, and we could actually have this whole park done. It's been a 3-year, project that we've been doing. Now, if we don't put this funding towards it, this pricing is only good for 90 days. So we're not 100% sure if we can get it in time to get CPC funding, which would be the alternative ask for this funding. The next price that we got, just for an example, was $120,000 more than this price. And so if we end up not being able to finish it, we decide, hey, we're gonna put in the playground equipment and the exercise equipment in a year or two, we're looking at asking even more funding from the town than I'm asking you right now. So it would be like double the price. The estimated price, one of the prices that we got was $875,000 for an example. And this project, this bid came in at $543,000. So, I mean, it's just the best opportunity. We have called their references. They've done a lot of municipalities. They've done a lot of this work. And the company is from Salem, New Hampshire. It's not one of the big companies that has a lot of overhead, so they're able to offer lower prices. And it's a great, fantastic opportunity. But I do have to say, I'm glad that you guys talked about the public health and safety funding first. I think that first and foremost is the most important, so. That is all.
And the other thing is, for the 100K, we have to do something about the ADA ramps if we're not compliant. I don't know about sidewalks, stormwater, and roadway, but
I just did quick math over at my desk.
Right.
And if we did 125 for the West Wenham Park, the 70,000, the 15,000, that would leave DPW with 80,000 instead of the 100. And we can get the park done.
that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's a very compelling argument, Kate. Thank you. Steve, does that give you what you need to finalize a list?
Yes, we can put that together and have it ready for a vote. We'll circulate it ahead of time, so if there's any questions or clarification that the board needs, I obviously can raise it to me individually, and hopefully we'll have it all streamlined, put together for a vote next time.
All righty. So we're on to J, review, discussion, and potential vote to amend the current Wenham Select Board policy scheduled meeting cycle.
Yeah, so based on the discussion last time, I thought it would make sense to pull this up again and kind of look at it again and see if there's any updates that the board would like to make. I know one of the takeaways, well, one update I made with the first red line section is just to reflect the new public comment period that the board recently adopted. F is, I know there would seem to be some desire to not bring every email forward. This is something maybe we could amend it, or the board could amend it to reflect that it'd be up to the determination of the chair. Obviously, acknowledging that each chair may, view things differently and add, maybe not bring correspondence that other would have brought, but, leave some discretion to the chair in that respect.
Well, I think hopefully
Sorry.
my monthly meeting might get some of this, some of these topics. Because I think it was observed the other day, last meeting, that if you send an email and then all of a sudden you're, having to talk about this issue in front of the select board, televised, that we may actually hinder getting good feedback.
Right, and I agree. And another part of that, I think the board should think about it, and this was discussed probably 4 meetings ago, how to handle emails that require a response. So at that meeting, the board, had kind of reiterated the need to bring every email forward so that they can review and either comment collectively as a board, or discuss how they would like to provide a response. So you are going to end up with situations where where an individual is looking for a response, and maybe the board doesn't review it. I don't know, just something to kind of wrestle with on how to best handle those one-off emails that they may not want to come before you in a public meeting, but however, for you to respond as a board, you would need to discuss it in an open meeting, unless you want the chair or myself to respond in a factual manner. Give me the authority to do that, and then if further response is needed, then bring it to the board.
I think this requires discretion. I don't think we can have sort of a one-size-fits-all. Either all correspondence is on or all is off. I think it does require a determination by the chair, or it should also be that individual members could request a particular piece of correspondence be put on the agenda. I don't think every single person's email has to be on the agenda, but I don't think that we also need the person's permission, because once you submit an email, it is public record. And then, like you said, if it requires a response from the board, that has to be done in public. And I think the office hours are great. I mean, I'm happy to do office hours too and talk to people, but individually, we don't represent the board. That's only your own personal perspective. So a board response has to come from here. So I think this is not a one-size-fits-all. I think what you have, if I can read it, not very well, correspondence is determined by the chair, and/or can be requested to be placed on the agenda by an individual select board member. I mean, I suppose the chair could still deny the request, but I think we should be able to request that a particular email be agended if we feel like we have comments to say in public.
I'm fine with that. What do you think, Gary?
I think there's one step also that needs to be included in there, that somewhere in here we should say that any emails received will be acknowledged by the chair or perhaps the town administrator, and then we flow into this policy. That way, people that send an email know that it got received and it's being paid attention to, but depending on the chair or business at hand, it may or may not progress onto the regular schedule. So I'd put something in there that, the town administrator will acknowledge all emails, and then they go to the further process of getting on the agenda or not.
Yeah, town administrator or representative, I think. Could be Joe, could be Michelle, could be.
Could be Joe.
To acknowledge it, of course.
Is it not common practice that everybody responds? I mean, every email that I receive, I say thank you and acknowledge the person and.
Yeah, I don't think it precludes you from doing that, or any of us, but I think that everyone knows that the staff will acknowledge it as the policy, and then it's up to us to do our own acknowledgement.
So, are we now good?
I think so. I don't know. That's one point. Is there anything else?
I thought everything else looked pretty good.
So the agenda item for Jay is review, discussion, and potential vote to amend the current Wenham Select Board policy scheduled meetings cycle. Correct? That's what we're talking about right now, right, Jay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So does that, okay, thank you. So would this be an appropriate time to raise the issue of the meeting packet and whether it can be posted in advance and some of the legal guidance we got with respect to that?
I think it.
Yes, just if you scroll down to number 9 or number 10. I mean, that's kind of where like the posting of the packet in the public domain starts.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I mean, that's certainly, I think, a good point to discuss. Certainly been based on Lauren's opinion. As you saw, there was, she said the way we handled it would have been the way that she recommended we handle it. However, you saw that there's some ways to loosely interpret open meeting law. But I thought if the board would like to do something different than what council recommends, it's probably best to put in writing so that, whoever is here after me or, without, as the board transitions, knows how the board prefers to handle it.
Right. So number 10, I think it addresses the issue that I wanted to comment on, and it pertains to the timing of the posting of the meeting packet. And so Michelle does a great job of getting the board members a meeting packet on the Thursday prior to a Tuesday meeting. Town hall is obviously closed on Fridays, so Thursday is the last working day of the week for town hall staff. And then, as typically happens, and it's understandable that the packet sometimes grows and changes between that Thursday and the meeting, and as number 10 says, is typically an updated version of the meeting packet. So one of the issues that I think, Karen, you raised with respect to the letter to the state about 3A was there not being enough time for each member to review that letter because it wasn't displayed or read until the meeting itself. And I thought that a potential solution to that would be that if a draft letter of that type were part of a meeting packet that was posted on the website around the same time that it was disseminated to members, then that would potentially cure the open meeting law issue, which in that particular example stood in the way of the draft letter being circulated to all members prior to the meeting. And it, in our town council's guidance on this issue, she says the following, that there's a limited exception to a general rule that is pertinent to this, and she cites a 2018 Supreme Judicial Court case involving the Board of Selectmen of Wayland, where the SJC advised that if individual public body members, board members, were to have posted the circulated documents on the town's website and or made copies available for inspection at or about the time that the documents were circulated among a quorum of board members, then that contemporaneous disclosure to the public would remedy an issue under the open meeting law because it would advance the overall goal of promoting transparency in governmental decision-making, unquote. That's the quote from the case. And then Attorney Goldberg from KP Law says, in my experience, however, this is done sparingly, such as including in a meeting packet draft minutes prepared by one member. I personally think, and I completely defer to Lauren Goldberg's experience, obviously, in terms of how municipalities do this. In my private practice, I've seen it done routinely. I'm not saying it's the majority rule or that most boards do it this way, but the reason I raised it is because I've seen it done in a number of different towns where I practice in my private capacity. And I think it would be a great idea if, instead of the meeting packet being posted by 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting, that maybe that be moved up to the Monday. I think probably posting the initial packet on the Thursday, knowing that most of the time it's going to change on Monday or Tuesday, maybe isn't the greatest idea. But I think if we had a policy that whatever state the board meeting packet is in as of, let's say, noon on Monday, that could be posted, because then that would allow for some advance reading by board members of draft letters and the kinds of things that Karen raised the last time, and that would pass muster under the OML because it would be disseminated to the public, essentially, or available to the public at the same time. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that I'd like to maybe see the posting occur sooner than, the meeting packet posting occur sooner than 2 p.m.
So how about 2 p.m., 3 p.m. Monday?
on Monday. I'd propose that, but I also would be interested not only in my colleagues' views, but also the view of the people who would be responsible for posting it and gathering the packet, which is Steve, Joe, and Michelle. So I don't know, Steve, if you...
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a problem with getting the packet out. It's, it's probably 80% of the way there on Thursday. The hesitation of posting it, and you alluded to it before when the board came up with the Tuesday posting, was to not have multiple packets out there, in different stages of the completion, because there's really only one room for one final packet in the end. And, I guess just knowing that things will change, it's, you'll see earlier in this, or it might be later in this policy, to be on the agenda, all department heads have to have a memo and in my hand by Wednesday prior to the meeting and all that. But the reality of it is, and I don't expect it just doesn't always happen that way. And it's usually always a race to the finish. Things come up at the last minute, there's deadlines, so we're trying to get as much as we can onto each select board meeting to make sure we're hitting those deadlines. So I guess as long as you acknowledge that there will be some changes sometimes, I don't think as far as the ability for us internally to post it, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that would be an issue. On Monday afternoon.
Monday. Because, right, so it's likely to change a lot less between Monday and Tuesday than between Thursday and Tuesday.
Yes.
The other thing I would just add is that I think, just as a policy for our board, let's say that the meeting packet is quote unquote put to bed, closed by Monday afternoon, there may be certain things that occur in the next 24 hours, essentially, before our meeting, that are emergencies and that might need to be added. But I really don't think that if it's not an emergency, that it should be included in the Tuesday meeting if it comes in after Monday afternoon, because, we all lead busy lives and we all are asked by our constituents to give due consideration to things, and it's not really enough time often to have a same day, reading and analysis of things that we're going to be asked to talk about that night. So I don't know if that's something that could potentially be, built in.
I mean, it's all fair.
Agreed.
We can't add anything to agenda after Thursday night anyways, because open meeting law is the 48 business hours. And usually the only changes that would happen, and we try to be as minimal as we can, is just trickling information that is pertinent to, usually pieces of the packet that already exists, such as, final staffing reconciliation for the numbers that I just read out earlier was for, for the call firefighters, that information. We just kind of got that together this afternoon, but certainly wasn't any new discussion that was added.
Right. No, point taken with respect to the agenda, but I think, there are times where there are documents that, are substantive and important that come in day of, and there may be, oftentimes really good reason for that, but I think in general, it should really just be emergency documents that would come in to supplement the packet.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. That's a fair point.
Thank you for acknowledging that, Ben. But you eloquently said everything that was on my list here, so
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
I reiterate your entire point. Thank you.
So do we want to see this again with those changes made? So we'll deal with this again on next meeting.
Great.
All righty. Review and discussion of Finance and Advisory Committee's recommendations for fiscal 2026 budget process.
Yeah, so, excuse me, as requested from the select board, you were looking for some feedback from the Finance and Advisory Committee on this year's budget process after reviewing the revenue and expense model that was generated by Jeff Soulard. And before you, you see a summary from Jeff and a memorandum to myself summarizing the guidance that the Finance Committee would like to express to the Select Board. The long and short of it is they would like to see, our essentially additional levy capacity that would be allowable under Proposition 2.5, which is effectively your prior year levy limit plus 2.5%, to not be utilized in this case and to rely only on the growth allowed under new growth and local receipts. So new growth is estimated at $150,000 this year. In local receipts, an additional $150,000 for $300,000 total, or 1.27%. To and to that end, they brought up a good point that our proposed or our draft financial policies that the board reviewed over the summer and sent to the FinCom for their feedback, and they're still reviewing, is that we'd like to target our regeneration of free cash between 4% and 6% of our total expenditures. And over the last few years, we've been slightly above that. So to that end, it does highlight that there may be, the need to tighten up a little bit, either in our revenue estimates or our expenditures, thereby driving down the amount of free cash generation. So with that in mind, Jeff and I worked on a budget memo to present to the select board tonight, which is also the next piece down that to highlight Ben's point that came today, which is not ideal. And in this, we kind of used the opportunity to create a level funded budget. We're kind of behind the ball in the budget process this year. With the FinCom being vacant 3 seats, they weren't able to get a quorum, and now, so they've been able to meet now, and kind of they're back on track, but we're still about 3 weeks behind schedule. So this would allow us to get the budget process going. We're using new budget software, so there's certainly going to be a learning curve. It would also, help us go through the exercise of kind of ratcheting down on our expenditures, and instead of the FinCom or myself or the board making, dictating cuts or areas for restrictions, allows the departments to kind of highlight areas that they feel like they can tighten up on. And then, obviously there's going to be a number of conversations and additional analysis that's going to have to come before you, conversations between the FinCom and the select board, just because, it's a tough year and a tough labor market with 3 collective bargaining agreements up for renegotiation, and with the folks looking at the teachers union and the other educational contracts in neighboring communities and what they're settling their labor contracts with, is additionally the pressures that the communities receive from the Joint Labor Committee, the JLMC, in their public safety contracts through arbitration, that they'll override collectively bargained disagreements generally in favor of the public safety unions. So all that's to say that I think that the budget message put forward in front of you today, although you don't have to vote on it, you can't vote on it today, but we went back and forth internally with, what to present today and how to present it, because you can attack this at a number of different ways, and we felt that this exercise and moving forward with the process would be and allow the discussions to take place and get a feel of what best information to present to the boards made the most sense.
The exercise of looking at service reductions.
No, not necessarily service reductions, but so we have, like, if we talk round numbers, like just for to try to paint a picture, if you're regenerating, so let's say hypothetically we adopt the policy, and it's likely because it's best practice by GFOA, a number of professional associations, that you want a free cash regeneration of 4 to 6%. So that's basically you budgeted for more than you spent. So you had an extra $1 million, let's just say, at the end of every year. So you're regenerating $1 million in free cash. That puts you at a 10% regeneration rate as a percentage of expenditures, but you want to be between 4 and 6. So you want to reduce that to roughly $500,000. So you're saying you don't know where the excess is, although we can highlight some through our budget to actual variances with the audit. But it's fluctuating every year. It's not just because one department had a large give back last year. It's that department's over budgeted. But in general, over 3 years, we're giving back, like, it's not $1 million isn't the right number, but you're giving back $1 million. You should maybe be a little tighter than that. So you're looking for like $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 reduction across the $25 million budget. And at least in my opinion, it's best to let the departments pick what they think they can tighten up on. And a way to do that is in a level funded budget, you have contractual obligations that still have to be met. So if you have a contractual obligation, you need to identify an offsetting reduction that will maintain a level service. The message is it's a level service and a level funded budget. You're not looking to reduce services at this time. And then you go through the process and see where what we're able to identify, and it's possible maybe you can't get down that much, but at least you've gone through the process and tried.
Comments?
Well, you have two sides of the budget too, so not only can you look at the expenditures, but also perhaps we need to review our best guess at revenues too, because even if you go the FinCom looking at 1.27% versus the max 3% with a 2.5% cap and so forth, both those numbers are so tight that they actually fall within the 4 to 6% range on our free cash flow. So yes, I would support a close look at department budget expenditures on this first iteration and see what real numbers we come out with on that, and then also look and see if our free cash flow is larger than expected based upon underestimating revenues too. Take a look at that.
Would you like me to add a little color to that? Or?
Sure.
So just to give you a little background, FY24 closing out right now, it looks like we could regenerate $1.8 million, which is roughly 7.75% of last year's, the FY24 budget. Roughly 950 of that, say, is coming from excess revenue. Somewhere in the $800,000 range is coming from, underspent budget. The issue on the revenue side is that we are restricted by the DOR. Our revenue is, by design, by the way they restrict us, is we're never going to be able to get close enough to it, so we're always going to be returning quite a bit. The numbers I'm proposing for FY '26, the next year, are my best guess at the highest amount the DOR is going to let me take. That's not to say I couldn't maybe squeeze another $100,000 out of that, but generally speaking, the DOR is going to want us to be conservative. So if you think about it in terms of a normal year, if we're ratcheting up to the full Prop 2.5 increase, and then trying to stay under a Prop 2.5 override, the DOR doesn't want to be in a situation where they allowed me to overestimate revenue. It doesn't come in as planned, and suddenly we're in an override position because our revenue came in, less than expected. So typically they're going to skew it towards, let's have you be under. So, I think as we get towards the end of this season in terms of doing the budget, will I be able to squeeze, some extra money out of the revenue? Maybe a little bit, but, even though we might have, again, we're returning, close to $1 million potentially, the DOR is not going to let me capture all of that. They might let me capture, I'm probably capturing 300, they might let me get to 4. So I think in this exercise, if we look at the 4 to 6% range, we are probably about $400,000 over if we regenerated the full 6%. So in theory, that means there's $400,000 available to us in the budget process that maybe we can find somewhere in the budget, to sort of, right-size things. It's not going to be perfect. It's not that, I can go identify exactly where it's going to be. There'll have to be some estimates made, work with the departments, and probably, as I've talked to the Finance Committee about, if we're squeezing these budgets, at some point we need to take some portion of that and put extra money into Finance Committee reserve, because it's likely something isn't going to break our way, right? So, the example I used with the Finance Committee is, some years you have a bad windstorm, knocks down lots of trees, the Highway Department incurs a lot of extra costs. We didn't have one of those storms last year, so we're returning some good amount of money. Next year you have one of those storms. If you reduce the DPW budget all the way down, where is the money for the storm coming from? So you'd have to store some in FinCom reserve to account for that. I think the exercise that the FinCom is proposing here is a worthwhile exercise. I mean, I've only been here a little less than a year now. I've heard plenty of talk about taxes and tax rates and how high the taxes are. And I can tell you that sort of Finn Sprague, who's our new chair, he's a big proponent in a couple of things. One is benchmarking versus, peer communities. And another is really, using the budget exercise in this new software to really shine a light on, the taxes are high, but what is the value that you get for that tax payment? And sort of, putting it back on the departments a little bit to explain what they do and the service and the value they deliver to the residents, and what would be lost if, in fact, we did sort of reduce the budget a little bit. People would understand, geez, I really like how the police department operates, or how the fire department operates, or the library, or whatever service that might be. And there's a cost associated with that, but I sort of appreciate the service that I get back. And I think maybe we have to do a better job of getting residents to understand what that value received back for that tax dollar is. Because certainly all of us, no matter where we live, would like to pay less in taxes, but at the same time, there's a trade-off for what is the value you're getting for that. And I think the proposed way of approaching the budget this year should hopefully shine a light on that, which in the long term, I think is probably helpful to the town. So.
Thanks, Jeff. I have a question. Are you a reporter?
Yes,
There you go. Finally figured out who. So what's your name?
I'm from Norway. I was at the.
She was at the last one.
Oh, a little slow. So, all right, thank you, Jeff. All right, Steve,
Yes?
for the next
Yep.
meeting, what is going to be the first old business we talk about?
Next time?
Continued discussion and potential vote on select board goals and objectives for FY '25.
That's going to be first at the next meeting, right, Peter?
Right.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so, if you guys don't, what the hell did I do? So I'm suggesting that we not talk about that and that we actually move for adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn the select board meeting of October 22nd at 8:31 PM.
And our next meeting is November
Yeah, the day after Election Day, the
6th.
6th.
6th, November 6th. Second?
I said second.
Karen did.
Good. Ready to vote? Peter says yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Ben, yes.
Karen, yes.
Gary, yes.
Okay, we're done. Thank you, Catherine.